Not long ago, I released a video about respect for public service, especially the military, but also law enforcement. In that video, I talked about why those roles matter, why they're often thankless, and why gratitude alone isn't enough. We owe support, we owe respect, and I stand by that. People who choose to serve in these roles are, by default, choosing something noble. That hasn't changed for me. So when we talk about this topic, I want to be very clear up front. This does not have to be one thing or the other. I can genuinely respect and support people who choose to serve in law enforcement. And I can also believe that when we grant any group extraordinary power, we have a responsibility to think carefully about how that power is used. That tension isn't a contradiction, it's the point. For this discussion, I want to focus specifically on domestic law enforcement. In most democratic systems, the military is meant to operate beyond a country's borders. That distinction and why it matters is something I've spent time thinking about and talking through elsewhere in another video, but that's a different discussion. What we're dealing with here is the use of force within society against citizens. When we deputize law enforcement, we give them authority that regular citizens do not have. They are legally permitted, under specific circumstances, to restrain people, to restrict physical freedom, and in extreme cases, to use lethal force. This isn't about self-defense, which all citizens have the right to. This is about state-sanctioned power. Because that power exists, we provide tools to support it. Batons, mace, firearms, riot gear, tear gas, and in some places, equipment that looks increasingly military in nature. None of this is inherently good or bad on its own. It's an acknowledgement of reality. We put law enforcement into dangerous situations, and we give them tools to protect themselves and others. That part makes sense. Now, whether or not you agree with the specific tools being given to law enforcement in your area or country or whatnot isn't really what we're going to be discussing here. This is going to be more about the general use of force by law enforcement. Where things become complicated is that humans are involved. No amount of training removes human psychology. People respond differently under stress. Repeated exposure to high-intensity situations changes perception, judgment, and threat response. That doesn't excuse bad actions, but it does explain why guardrails exist in the first place. Because the power being exercised is dangerous, even when intentions are good. This is why democratic systems intentionally build friction into the use of force. Why some places restrict car chases, why officers are sometimes trained to let a suspect go, and in some places, drawing a weapon even triggers a review. Not because the system doesn't care about crime, but because the cost of getting it wrong is too high. Anytime force is used, other people are put at risk. Bystanders, communities, entire neighborhoods. Restraint isn't weakness. Restraint is responsibility. This brings me to oversight. If you believe in a free and democratic society, and you don't want an authoritarian state where forces go unquestioned, I think it follows that review and accountability matter. At a minimum, when human life is taken, there must be investigation. Not automatic condemnation, not automatic exoneration, just review. Were procedures followed? Was training adhered to? Does this person need retraining? Should they still be in this role? That process isn't an insult to law enforcement, it's the foundation of legitimacy. There's also something else that often gets missed. When restraint and oversight disappear, law enforcement itself is put into danger. Because when the public stops trusting law enforcement, witnesses stop cooperating, communities disengage, information dries up, officers become more isolated. Trust isn't abstract, it's operational. Oversight protects good officers from being tainted by silence. It reinforces the idea that law enforcement exists to protect people, not simply enforce the will of the state. That distinction matters. And to be fair, I don't pretend this is easy. We can't know what's in everyone's head. We can't always know why someone did what they did. All we can do is look at actions, and then decide, collectively, what standards we expect from people entrusted with extraordinary power. And there has to be a higher standard, because law enforcement is given more authority than anyone else to restrict our freedoms, physically, legally, and in extreme cases, permanently. More power demands more restraint. More authority demands more accountability. This doesn't weaken democracy, it protects it. Looking the other way helps no one, not the public, not officers, not the system. Restraint, trust, oversight. That's the difference between a free society and an authoritarian one. At least, that's how I've come to see it. And that's worth slowing down and thinking about.